What happens when the most disrespected person in the room is actually the most dangerous one to cross? For 6 months, the trauma team at a major city hospital mocked the older, slow nurse who never rushed. They called her a liability. Then the medevac pilot walked in. In the high-stakes, adrenaline-soaked ecosystem of the Level 1 Trauma Center at St. Jude's Medical Center, speed was the ultimate currency. If you couldn't move fast, think fast, and speak fast, you were nothing but a speed bump to the rest of the staff. St. Jude's was a meat grinder of a hospital situated right off the interstate, catching the worst of the city's wreckage, high-speed collisions, industrial accidents, and late-night violence. In this world of organized chaos, Nurse Sarah Jenkins stuck out like a sore thumb. Sarah was 52 years old, her graying blonde hair always pulled back into an uncompromising tight bun. While the fresh-faced nursing graduates practically sprinted down the linoleum corridors in their neon-trimmed scrubs, Sarah walked. She never jogged. She never rushed. She moved with a steady, infuriatingly deliberate cadence, her orthotic shoes squeaking softly against the polished floors. To the young hotshots running the emergency department, she was a relic. They didn't know much about her background, only that she had transferred in from somewhere out of state 6 months ago. Human Resources had slotted her into the evening shift, the most brutal rotation in the hospital. The undisputed king of the evening shift was Dr. Harrison Cole. At 33, Cole was a brilliant, arrogant trauma surgeon fresh off a high-profile fellowship. He was handsome, ruthlessly efficient, and treated his staff less like colleagues and more like interchangeable tools in an operating theater. Cole thrived on the adrenaline of the golden hour, the critical 60 minutes after a traumatic injury, where rapid intervention meant the difference between life and death. To Dr. Cole, Sarah was an absolute liability. "Jenkins," Cole barked one Tuesday evening, his voice cutting through the din of Trauma Bay 1. A 20-year-old motorcycle accident victim lay on the table, alarms blaring as his blood pressure plummeted. "I need 100 milligrams of rocuronium, and I needed it 30 seconds ago. Are you moving in slow motion?" Sarah didn't flinch. She stood at the medication cart, holding the vial up to the harsh fluorescent light, her eyes tracking the label. "Drawing it up now, doctor," she said, her voice calm, devoid of any panic or inflection. "Give me the damn syringe," Cole snapped, snatching it from her gloved hand the second she turned around. He administered the paralytic, his jaw tight with fury. "If you can't keep up with the pace of a Level 1 trauma, Jenkins, go work in a podiatry clinic. You are a danger to my patients." Sarah simply stepped back, hands clasped loosely in front of her, watching the monitor as the patient's vocal cords relaxed, allowing Cole to slide the endotracheal tube in. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. The rest of the nursing staff took their cues from Cole. Chloe Davis, a 24-year-old charge nurse who worshipped the ground, Dr. Cole walked on, made it her personal mission to ensure Sarah knew she didn't belong. In the break room, Chloe would hold court. "I swear to God, watching Molasses Jenkins try to spike an IV bag is like watching paint dry," Chloe scoffed, sipping her iced coffee, while the other young nurses giggled. "Did you see her during the GSW last night?" Cole was screaming for O-negative blood, and she's standing there double-checking the barcode on the bag. The guy is bleeding out, and she's playing librarian. What Chloe and Dr. Cole didn't understand, what they lacked the experience to see, was the terrifying precision behind Sarah's slowness. Yes, she checked the barcode on the blood bag while the patient bled. But in doing so, she caught a fatal error made by the blood bank. The bag they had sent down was A positive, not the universal O negative requested. If she had rushed and hung that bag blindly, the gunshot victim would have died from an acute hemolytic transfusion reaction within minutes. She had quietly swapped the bag, saving the patient's life, and saving Dr. Cole from a $1 million malpractice lawsuit. She never mentioned it. She never sought credit. But the mockery continued. They assigned her the grunt work. They rolled their eyes when she spoke up in shift huddles. They actively tried to petition the nursing director to have her transferred to a long-term care facility, claiming she didn't have the edge required for emergency medicine. Through it all, Sarah Jenkins remained an iceberg. She clocked in, did her job with robotic precision, and clocked out. She never joined in the break room gossip. She never retaliated. She simply watched them, her pale blue eyes tracking the frantic, wasteful movements of the young staff, like a seasoned predator watching frantic prey. She knew something they didn't. She knew that running fast meant nothing if you were running in the wrong direction. And she knew that true chaos hadn't even touched this hospital yet. It happened on a Friday in mid-November. The weather forecasters had warned of a severe winter squall moving off the coast, but no one expected the sudden violent drop in temperature that turned the torrential rain into a sheet of invisible black ice across Interstate 90. At 6:15 p.m., the ER doors were relatively quiet. Dr. Cole was at the main desk, flirting with Chloe over a chart, while Sarah was quietly restocking the Belmont rapid infusers in the trauma bays. Then the red trauma phone rang. Its shrill, piercing tone instantly silenced the room. Chloe picked it up. As she listened to the dispatcher, all the color drained from her face. Her hand began to tremble. She dropped the receiver back onto the cradle, missing it on the first try. "What is it?" Cole demanded, his flirtatious demeanor vanishing. "Mass casualty incident," Chloe stammered, her voice breathless with sudden terror. A commercial tour bus carrying 40 passengers lost control on the I-90 overpass. It completely crossed the median and hit a convoy of logging trucks head-on. There's a multi-vehicle pileup behind it. Dispatch says at least 20 critical, dozens more walking wounded. They're routing everyone to us. The ER froze for a microsecond. Then panic erupted. "Clear the waiting room, empty every bed you can," Cole shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "Call the blood bank. Tell them we need massive transfusion protocols on standby. Get the surgical teams down here now." For the next 20 minutes, it was the frantic preparation before a war. And then the war arrived. The double doors blew open, and the paramedics flooded in. It was a relentless tide of blood-twisted metal and screaming. The smell of copper and diesel fuel instantly overpowered the sterile scent of the hospital. "Trauma Bay 1, a paramedic yelled, wheeling in a man with a crushed chest. "Tension pneumo BP is dropping, heart rate 140. Trauma 2, another shouted right behind him. "Amputation makeshift tourniquet applied. He's going into hypovolemic shock." Dr. Cole was sprinting between bays, shouting orders. "Chest tube now. Somebody get a central line kit. Where is the damn anesthesia tech?" The system began to fracture under the weight of the casualties. The young, fast nurses who thrived on single isolated traumas were suddenly drowning. They were moving incredibly fast, but they were making mistakes. Chloe dropped a tray of intubation equipment, the plastic shattering across the floor. She knelt down, sobbing in pure overwhelm, paralyzed by the sheer volume of screaming patients. Cole was sweating profusely, his hands slick with blood. He was trying to place a chest tube in Bay 1, but the patient was thrashing. "Hold him down! Somebody hold him down!" Cole screamed, losing his composure. Through the sheer bedlam, Sarah Jenkins walked. She didn't run. She didn't shout. But suddenly, her slowness revealed itself for what it truly was: extreme, lethal efficiency. Every single movement she made had a purpose. She didn't waste a millimeter of motion. She stepped over the crying charge nurse, swiftly picking up the sterile tools Chloe had managed not to contaminate, and handed them to a resident. She moved into bay. One placed a firm, uniquely positioned grip on the thrashing patient's shoulders, a grip that immobilized him completely with minimal effort, and looked at Cole. "Tube him, doctor," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it possessed a strange, vibrating authority that instantly cut through the screaming. Cole, wide-eyed, shoved the chest tube in. Before he could even thank her, Sarah was already gone. She was at the central console, her fingers flying over the keyboard, coordinating the blood bank deliveries that the administrative staff had abandoned in panic. She was anticipating needs before the doctors even voiced them. When a resident reached blindly for a syringe of epinephrine, Sarah had already placed it in his hand, perfectly dosed. She was a ghost moving through the trenches, patching the holes in the sinking ship. But the real crisis was yet to come. The hospital radio crackled to life, the loud burst of static interrupting the chaos. It was King County Airlift Northwest, the medevac helicopter. "St. Jude's, this is Dustoff 7 Alpha. We are inbound with a pediatric priority 1. 7-year-old female massive blunt force trauma to the chest, pericardial effusion. She has minutes over." Dr. Cole sprinted to the radio console, his chest heaving. "Dustoff 7 Alpha. This is Dr. Cole. Have your surgical team prep her in the air. We are ready for you on the roof pad." The radio crackled back, the sound of heavy rotor blades and violent wind bleeding through the speaker. "Negative St. Jude's. Winds are currently gusting at 45 knots up here. Visibility is near zero with the sleet. Your roof pad is a death trap right now. I cannot safely touch down. I'm declaring an abort. We are diverting to Mercy General, over." Cole turned pale. Mercy General was 20 minutes away. "Dustoff, you cannot divert," Cole screamed into the microphone, losing all professional composure. "This girl will die in the air. You have to land. That is an order. Land the damn chopper. I am the pilot in command. Doc." The voice snapped back, laced with stress and anger. "I don't take orders from civilians, and I'm not putting my crew into the side of your building. We are breaking off. Dustoff out." "No, wait!" Cole shouted, slamming his fist on the console. He looked around wildly. The child was going to die because of the weather. The ER staff who had overheard the exchange stopped, a heavy dark silence falling over them. They were helpless. Then a hand gently but firmly pushed Dr. Cole aside. It was Sarah. She didn't look at Cole. She picked up the microphone. Her posture shifted. The slumped, quiet older woman vanished. She stood straight, her shoulders squared, her eyes locked on the radio display with a terrifying ice-cold intensity. When she spoke into the microphone, her voice was totally different. It was a voice that had commanded men in the darkest corners of the earth. "Dustoff 7 Alpha. This is Jenkins." She didn't yell. She spoke with a slow, measured cadence that commanded absolute obedience. "You are not diverting. You are going to bring that bird down." "St. Jude's, I already told your doctor." "I don't care what you told the doctor," Sarah interrupted, her voice dropping an octave, radiating absolute authority. "You have a severe crosswind from the northeast. Your ground effect on that roof is going to be compromised by the air conditioning units on the east parapet. I know. I've flown it. Dr. Cole stared at her, his jaw literally dropping. Chloe, standing nearby with blood on her scrubs, stopped breathing. Sarah continued, completely ignoring the stunned doctors around her. You are going to approach from the southwest, keeping the helipad's elevator housing between you and the primary wind shear. Drop your collective bank heavy to the left and commit to a hard deck landing. Do not hover. You hover, you die. Put her down hard, dust off. There was a long, agonizing pause on the radio. The static hissed. St. Jude's? Who the hell am I speaking to? The pilot asked, his voice shaking slightly. You're speaking to someone who expects that child on my table in exactly 3 minutes, Sarah said coldly. Now fly the damn aircraft, Captain. The radio remained silent, save for the rhythmic, violent thumping of the helicopter's rotor blades transmitted through the open mic. Inside the trauma center, time seemed to suspend itself. The monitors continued to beep. The wounded continued to groan, but every able-bodied staff member near the nurses' station was paralyzed, staring at the gray-haired woman holding the microphone. Jenkins, Dr. Cole breathed, his voice trembling. What did you just do? If that chopper goes down on our roof, it's going to breach the building. You just ordered a man to his death. Sarah ignored him completely. She unclipped her hospital ID badge from her scrubs and tossed it onto the keyboard, her pale blue eyes locking onto the young charge nurse. Chloe, take over the blood bank logistics. Do not deviate from the massive transfusion protocol. We are going to need 4 units of O-negative and a pediatric crash cart waiting at the trauma elevator. Move. Chloe, terrified and awestruck, practically scrambled over the desk to obey. Sarah turned toward the secure doors leading to the helipad elevators. Cole, you're with me. Bring the pericardiocentesis tray. We have less than 2 minutes. For the first time in his celebrated arrogant career, Dr. Harrison Cole did not argue. He grabbed the tray, his hands slick with cold sweat, and sprinted after the older nurse. The ride up the freight elevator was excruciating. The mechanical hum of the lift felt agonizingly slow. Cole stared at Sarah, who stood perfectly still, her hands resting calmly by her sides. She didn't look like a slow, tired nurse anymore. She looked like a statue forged from cold iron. Who are you? Cole finally choked out the question tearing from his throat. How do you know about wind shear and ground effect? You're a floor nurse. Sarah didn't even turn her head. Put your gloves on, doctor. The ambient temperature on the roof is 14 degrees. Your manual dexterity is going to drop by 40% the second those doors open. Focus on the child. The elevator chimed. The heavy steel doors slid apart, and the howling fury of the winter squall hit them like a physical blow. The roof was a nightmare of freezing rain and whipping winds. Floodlights cut through the sleet, illuminating the giant white H painted on the frozen tarmac. Above them, roaring out of the black sky, came Dust-Off 7 Alpha. It was a twin-engine UH-60 Black Hawk, painted in emergency medical colors, but it was being battered relentlessly. The crosswind was violently shoving the 5-ton aircraft toward the elevator housing. Cole screamed over the deafening roar of the turbines shielding his eyes from the ice. He's coming in too fast. He's going to crash. He's committing to the hard deck. Sarah yelled back, her voice cutting through the mechanical scream of the engines. Stand your ground. The helicopter dropped like a stone, just as Sarah had instructed. The pilot banked heavily to the left, using the elevator housing to block the worst of the wind shear. He didn't hover to find a gentle touchdown. Doing so would have allowed the gusting wind to flip them. Instead, he slammed the Black Hawk down onto the concrete pad. The landing gear shrieked in protest, the struts compressing violently under the impact, but the aircraft held. The rotors continued to scream overhead, slicing through the freezing rain. Before the skids had even settled, the side door of the chopper was kicked open. A flight medic jumped out, slipping on the icy concrete, desperately pulling a wheeled stretcher behind him. On it was a tiny, frail figure, strapped beneath a mountain of thermal blankets. Sarah was already moving. She didn't slip. She navigated the icy, wind-battered roof with terrifying precision. She reached the stretcher just as the pilot, a tall man in a flight helmet and no-mech suit, jumped out of the cockpit to help guide the gurney. "We lost a pulse 30 seconds ago," the flight medic screamed over the rotor wash. "Traumatic cardiac arrest, suspected pericardial tamponade." "Get her inside," Sarah roared, grabbing the front of the gurney. As they shoved the stretcher toward the safety of the elevator, the pilot grabbed the back rail to help push. Under the harsh glare of the halogen floodlights, the pilot's eyes met Sarah's. The man froze. He literally stopped pushing the gurney, his gloved hand slipping from the metal rail. His jaw slackened beneath his communication microphone. He stared at the gray-haired 52-year-old nurse, as if he were looking at a ghost. "Move, Captain!" Sarah barked, her eyes flashing with dangerous intensity. The pilot snapped out of his shock, shoving the gurney into the elevator car. Cole and the flight medic crowded in alongside the child. As the heavy steel doors began to close, shutting out the storm and the roar of the helicopter, the pilot stood on the roof, rain lashing his face. Just before the doors sealed, Cole heard the pilot shout a single bewildered word over the storm. "Colonel," the descent to the emergency department was a frantic battle for a 7-year-old's life. The little girl, Emily, was pale as porcelain, her lips tinged blue. The monitor attached to her stretcher showed a flat, unyielding green line. "Start chest compressions," Cole yelled, his panic resurfacing. He reached to push on the child's chest. Sarah physically swatted his hands away with enough force to sting. "No compressions. She has a pericardial tamponade. Her heart is trapped in a sac of blood. Compressions will rupture her myocardium. We need to drain the sac right now." She ripped open the sterile pericardiocentesis tray before Cole could even process her words. "Get the ultrasound probe on her chest. Find the window. I'm going to needle her." I should do it. I'm the surgeon." Cole stammered, his hands shaking. "Your hands are shaking, doctor," Sarah said, her voice dropping into that terrifyingly calm, absolute register. She looked him dead in the eye. "My hands are not. Probe, now." Cole obeyed. He grabbed the portable ultrasound wand from the corner of the elevator and pressed it to the child's sternum. The black and white screen flickered to life, showing a massive dark halo of fluid suffocating the tiny, struggling heart muscle. Sarah took the massive spinal needle from the tray. She didn't hesitate. She didn't double-check. Guided by a lifetime of muscle memory, forged in environments far worse than a hospital elevator, she slid the needle just below the child's xiphoid process, angling it perfectly toward the left shoulder. She pulled back on the syringe. Instantly, thick, dark blood filled the plastic barrel. "Fluid is draining," Sarah announced calmly, locking a stopcock in place and attaching a larger drainage bag. "Heart is decompressing." Cole stared at the ultrasound monitor. The dark halo around the heart began to shrink. Suddenly, the trapped heart gave a weak, erratic flutter. Then it squeezed. Then it squeezed again, establishing a rapid but steady rhythm. The flat line on the cardiac monitor instantly spiked into beautiful soaring peaks. Emily gasped, her tiny chest heaving as blood finally circulated to her brain. The elevator doors chimed and slid open to the chaotic ER. Chloe was standing exactly where Sarah had told her to be, the pediatric crash cart and O-negative blood ready, pulse restored. Sarah called out to the stunned room, immediately taking the handles of the gurney. Trauma Bay 3 is clear. Cole, prep her for a surgical window to manage the bleed. Chloe, push 1 unit of O-negative on a rapid infuser, warm it to 38 degrees. The young staff, previously running around like headless chickens, fell into line instantly. They didn't look to Dr. Cole for orders. They looked to Sarah. The shift in power was absolute and undeniable. For the next 4 hours, the emergency department operated like a well-oiled military machine. Guided by Sarah's quiet, ruthless efficiency, they stabilized the victims of the highway pileup. By 2 a.m., the last critical patient had been wheeled up to the surgical intensive care unit. The ER was left looking like a war zone littered with bloody gauze, discarded plastic packaging, and empty IV bags. Dr. Cole sat on a rolling stool near the nurse's station, his scrub top soaked with sweat. He was exhausted, but for the first time in his life, his arrogance was entirely gone. He stared across the room at Sarah, who was quietly, methodically wiping down a stainless steel counter with a bleach wipe. She moved at her usual steady, deliberate pace. The sliding glass doors of the ER hissed open. Walking into the department was the medevac pilot. He had stripped off his flight helmet, revealing short, sweat-matted brown hair. His flight suit was stained with grease and rain. He walked past the security guard, past Chloe, and straight toward the center of the room. Cole stood up. "Captain, I want to thank you for that landing. You saved that girl's life." The pilot didn't even look at Cole. He walked straight past the hotshot trauma surgeon and stopped 3 feet behind Sarah. He stood at strict, rigid attention. "Captain David Miller, United States Army 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, retired." The pilot said, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet emergency room. Sarah stopped wiping the counter. She let out a long, quiet sigh, tossing the bleach wipe into a biohazard bin. She turned around, a faint, almost sad smile touching her lips. "At ease, Miller," Sarah said softly. "You fly civilian medevac now. We're out of the sandbox." Miller didn't relax. "I'd know that voice anywhere on a radio, ma'am. You guided my Black Hawk down into the Korangal Valley under heavy mortar fire in 2012 when my tail rotor was shot to hell. You saved my entire crew." Chloe, who had been eavesdropping from the medication room, dropped a plastic basin. It clattered loudly against the linoleum. Cole stepped forward, his mind struggling to process the scene. "Wait, Korangal Valley. You two know each other." Miller finally turned his head to look at Dr. Cole. The pilot's eyes were filled with a mixture of profound respect and simmering anger. "Know each other?" Miller echoed, a harsh bark of a laugh escaping his lips. He looked around at the young, exhausted nurses and the arrogant surgeon. "You people have absolutely no idea who you've been working with. Do you? I've heard the rumors about this hospital. I know you call her the slow nurse. I know you think she's washed up." Miller pointed a firm finger at Sarah. "This is Colonel Sarah Jenkins, former commander of the United States Air Force, 24th Special Tactics Squadron's Medical Wing. She is a combat rescue officer. She has deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. She has performed open-heart surgery in the dirt while taking enemy fire. She holds a silver star and a purple heart. She's forgotten more about trauma medicine than you will learn in your entire miserable life, doctor. The silence in the ER was absolute. It was so quiet you could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Chloe covered her mouth with her hands, tears of intense shame welling in her eyes. She remembered calling Sarah Molasses Jenkins. She remembered mocking her for double-checking blood barcodes. She had been mocking a decorated war hero who was operating on a level of precision they couldn't even fathom. Cole felt the blood drain from his face. He remembered screaming at her. He remembered telling her she was a liability and belonged in a podiatry clinic. He felt physically sick to his stomach. "Is that true?" Cole whispered, his voice cracking. Sarah looked at Miller, offering him a gentle, reproving look. "That's enough, David. They don't need a resume." "They need to show some damn respect," Colonel Miller snapped fiercely. "They are young," Sarah replied, her voice soothing, carrying the heavy wisdom of a commander who had seen too many young people die. "They think speed is the same thing as control. They will learn. Tonight, they learned." Sarah turned her gaze to Cole and Chloe. There was no anger in her pale blue eyes. There was no vindictiveness. There was only the immense quiet grace of someone who had nothing left to prove to anyone. "Dr. Cole," Sarah said, her voice returning to its normal quiet cadence. "You did good work tonight. When the panic broke, you focused on the child. That's what matters. Not the ego, not the speed, just the patient." Cole took a shaky step forward. He, the golden boy of St. Jude's, the untouchable trauma god, suddenly felt very small. I am so sorry, Sarah. I have been arrogant. I have been blind. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything, doctor," Sarah replied, picking up a fresh bleach wipe from the canister. "Just remember that the loudest person in the room is rarely the most dangerous, and rushing blindly into chaos only creates more casualties." She turned back to the counter, her orthopedic shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor. She resumed wiping down the stainless steel, her movements slow, deliberate, and perfectly efficient. The ER staff watched her in reverent silence. They no longer saw a tired, slow, gray-haired woman. They saw the commander. They saw the apex predator of trauma medicine hiding in plain sight. They knew without a shadow of a doubt that as long as Sarah Jenkins was in their emergency room, they would never lose another fight against death. If this gripping story of hidden heroism, unyielding grace, and the ultimate reality check kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to share this incredible real-life medical drama with your friends and smash that subscribe button so you never miss another jaw-dropping story of everyday heroes hiding in plain sight. Leave a comment below. Have you ever underestimated someone only to be proven completely wrong? Let us know.